All right. It's another episode of Write Once, Read Many. This time covering chapters 20.4 and 20.5. Get the speed draw underway. Get the link out. All right. I see that Greg and Vale have made it here. As a reminder for the audience participation question, for 20.4 and 20.5, it was, how do you think Dragon could have handled the cafeteria confrontation better, accepting the idea that they do force the confrontation there? So, sort of however you would have played it out a little different. I mean, even cheesing it a bit and using knowledge that you know about Taylor that Dragon doesn't necessarily have, so kind of whatever. For the themes, I kind of put there's like the reputation, very obvious. It's like she's using her clout of all her past actions to as like a big overwhelming threat, so they can't do anything to her. And then emotional dissociation, I thought, because she like can't tell what she's feeling at all and is only able to tell by her like physical reactions that she can observe outwardly what she's feeling, which is pretty far, you know. And then dramatic irony, more so in 20.5, mostly talking about knowing, like the audience knowing about Dragon and Taylor not knowing, you know. So we'll talk about that as we get to it. And as you can see, as the speed draw goes, it's sort of Taylor sneaking out among the students, putting her hood up, taking her glasses off. It's a bit of a long speed draw because, you know, each individual face takes a lot. But, I mean, I think this is one of the more striking images in the past while. And I've liked how all the images from this arc have been, like, just Taylor and Danny, Taylor and Emma and students in the front of the school, and then, like, Taylor and students here. Like, you could see these three images, and while I think they fulfill the chapters, like, perfectly, they also would never give away that it's a superhero story. Is that Taylor in the hoodie? Nope, no glasses. Can't be her. Classic Vale. What is the study of symbolism? It's like semiotics or something. The study of signs and symbols and their use or interpretation. Yeah, a Taylor without a glasses is no Taylor at all, is what Vale is saying, I think. Semiotically, once you remove the glasses. Anyway. Yes, so despite actually having themes, I don't have a super lot to say about them. We're almost ready to turn it over to the final image. It's classic. It's wonderful. It's an instant classic, I would say. It didn't exist before today, but it's already there. Anyway, rewinding time before this whole hoodie adventure to 20.4. Taylor thought the Greg thing might spiral out of control, and just when she thought she was just when she thought it was all clear, everything collapsed in on her, the school trap wouldn't have worked on her if she didn't confront Emma, or if she hadn't put her name into the computer by going with for Emma. So, I mean, she had many off-road ramps to escape from this. Um, but, sometimes you gotta act out. Taylor's distracted enough when she starts trying to escape that she runs and immediately is grabbed by a school guard. When he stops her, she thinks that she's not ready to fight, but he just tells her not to run. So, setting off down the hall, Taylor's super frazzled, but tries to keep it cool, think things through. Taylor starts to get a swarm going, assuming that either the heroes already know she's here, or if it's one of her other enemies, the heroes might actually be helpful in the situation. Going through some options in her head, she sort of heads in the direction of the cafeteria. The paper with the warning is torn up and thrown in the trash. Taylor's marking all the guards with bugs as she passes. Her standard kind of behavior. And she finds Adamant and Seer moving to the front doors. She sort of switches directions just in time to dip out of their sight line as they come around a corner. Initially, she had been worried that they would head right for her, but they don't seem to know where she is, and when she's passing the counselor's office, no one in there seems to know anything's up. They glance through, or they glance over her face and don't notice anything out of place. So, there's little details like Taylor notices again the school's just been renovated, so it's hard to get bugs inside, and with her sort of small swarm that she's got, she marks out some of the hallways with the slower bugs, but she can't do her normal thing where she floods an area and gets a full picture. She's using a minimalist wireframe of the hallways to figure out the layout. She gets a small cloud of flies and uses them as her ears. She gets them into the principal's office, and it becomes clear from the dialogue that the principal is arguing against the heroes engaging in the school. Even so, they insist. And after she hangs up, Principal Howell wastes a bit of time just sitting there. Taylor speeds up while she still can, but after a small little head start, Howell turns around to her computer and sets off some kind of alarm. Messages seem to go out to all the phones of the school guards and the heroes. Taylor, with her bug, senses that 2 boys have snuck out of class, and she's able to pretty easily figure out that this is going to be Clockblocker and Kid Win. The guards are able to shut and lock all the doors leading outside. They've closed the front gate, and they're starting to close off the chain link around the parking lot as well. So, it's a whole thing already. Taylor decides that she won't be able to escape through the parking lot as things are. She doesn't have enough bugs or her costume, and there's too many people opposing her right now. When she realizes that she's stuck, an announcement goes out over the PA from Principal Howell. May I have your attention, please? The school is now being locked down. For your own safety, please remain in your classrooms. Students not in an assigned classroom should proceed in a calm and orderly fashion to the nearest seating area. Students in the north wing of the school will need to make their way to the auditorium. Students in the south wing should gather in the cafeteria. Remain calm and rest assured there is no immediate danger. Things are looking a bit grim for our girl here. She knows that Kid Win has a way to see through walls with kind of his heat vision stuff, so she doesn't see hiding in a room to be a viable option. She can still sense Clockblocker and Kid Win as they're finishing changing into their costumes on the first floor. She figures out that this started with her name being put into the computer. The principal was against the lockdown but forced into it. And weighing her options, Taylor decides to stay inside but start a fight outside at the same time. She pulls the bugs from the surrounding blocks into a dense swarm clone near one of the fire doors, and it starts running to the gate. After a guard sees it and starts yelling for Seer, then Taylor starts dividing the forces into a bunch of different swarm clones, trying to maintain a kind of minimum density so that it looks like she could be in any of them. And then the announcement continues. A supervillain is currently near the school entrance. Students in the central areas of the school should relocate to the cafeteria. Anyone already in a secure place should please remain where they are. The guards aren't stationary and guarding areas. They're actively finding students to make sure people aren't getting left behind as they evacuate the area of the building near the offices. The guidance counselors start heading to the cafeteria as well, and Taylor's sort of absorbed into a group with them. Emma's in another group nearby that's also heading to the cafeteria. Taylor briefly thinks about, saying that she has a problem with a student in the cafeteria, but decides against it. She's going to go with the flow for now. A few more groups join them as they're going, and they sort of spread out again once they're in the cafeteria. Taylor's pretty successfully hidden herself in this group. Emma glares at Taylor across the room, and Taylor senses Charlotte as she's wearing one of the fly-in-a-box necklaces. Charlotte goes to get Taylor's attention, and Taylor says, "Best if you don't know me," as she passes by. Then Charlotte asks if this is about her, and Taylor kind of confirms. Sitting by herself at a table, Taylor tries to play things cool, as always. Sort of leaning forward onto the table like she's bored by all this. And while it's happening, she's actively fighting Seer outside. His power is able to kill or disable, big swaths of her bugs. They'll say it a little later, but he's got, a thin, cone-shaped, moisture pull / desiccation power. Taylor starts to map out the surrounding area, looking for any back exits or the like. And at this point, inside the building, she doesn't have enough bugs to leave them behind as she goes, so she has to memorize everything as the bugs make their way through. I gotta say, this was a great opportunity for her to push her limits, because she's having to do what she normally does on super low resources, having to do stuff like this, hallway memorization, all this stuff. So, really, really a great training exercise, if you ask me. Testing a bit to see Seer's sort of capabilities. Some of the bugs get too close and they become desiccated immediately because there's a permanent effect around him that's just like his cone attacks. It wasn't affecting people when he was in the offices, so it's clearly got an on-off switch, but yes, he has a radius around him in which bugs cannot get. So, unable to directly attack him, she tries something else. She has wave after wave of her bugs picking up dirt and other crap from the ground and trying to muddy up the water shield around Seer. It's pretty funny, even though it basically doesn't work at all. It's just funny to me that they're pelting him with little bits of dirt. So more students fill up the cafeteria. 50 or 60 kids who stayed in Brockton Bay. They're the stayed behind types she's seen. They must have been in gym class or something. They're all sweaty. 300 or 400 people in the room with her now. And when some boys sit at the other end of the table that Charlotte's at, she finally decides to move over and sit next to Taylor. When they're all hunched in together, she asks, for more info, and Taylor explains to Charlotte what's going on. How the principal was protecting the students affiliated with the Undersiders, but was forced to turn in Taylor. Taylor thinks it might be bad for Charlotte to stay with her, but relents and does let her stay. She reminds Charlotte in code that her most important responsibility is to the orphans in her care. Kidwin's getting near the door, and he uses his thermal goggles, realizing that Skitter isn't in any of the swarm clones. Right as he tries to yell this out to Seer, then Taylor flies a bunch of bugs into his mouth. Classic Taylor move. From what feels like far away, Charlotte asks her what she's doing. And she's more in the fight than she is in her own body. Adamant's torn between watching the fight in case he can jump in and try to make and do something versus like trying to make sure students are evacuating the right way. So he's sort of caught a little bit and not running outside. Clock blocker is moving to the front as well. Taylor answers Charlotte that she's causing chaos near the front of the school to give her time to improvise a mask and escape. She says that there are a few ways out of this room, and the principal might even help with a distraction. Charlotte questions this a bit. She asks if it was maybe the principal who turned her in, but Taylor doesn't think so. I think Taylor's got a good read on the situation. Kidwin tries to pull out a tinker device, but the swarm is all over him with the silk cords and just starts like hemming him in and grabbing the devices and pulling stuff away from him. Charlotte points out that if they already know who she is, then they can put her face on the news. Taylor says that this would be breaking a bunch of unwritten rules. It would be damaging the truce if the heroes arrested her with information that they got during an S-class threat. Charlotte points out that the whole thing doesn't really make sense. Why would they attack Taylor at the school where she could take a bunch of hostages? I wonder. So, Taylor says that she thinks that this might have been a big PR ploy by the heroes to try to stabilize their image after so many important capes have left the PRT in the last 3 weeks. She decides that her current attack on Seer won't work. Just dropping the dirt specks is doing nothing, however funny it might be. She decides to use a tactic that she thought up but couldn't utilize during the echidna fight. Spiders draw out a ton of like silk cord, and they're flying in formation at a distance around Seer and sort of spread out a bunch, but they're winding the cord out from winding 5 different silk cords around him, but out at a big distance, so it's not actually next to him at first. It's just getting more and more loops, and then once all the loops are out there, then they wait until he's close to like a signpost, and when he passes the signpost, all of the loops attach themselves to this post in the like spinning formation. And then his whole thing, like all the bugs let the cords collapse in on him, and he's just like completely caught up and tied. And then, you got bugs moving about, pulling on cords from all angles, probably trying to put more stuff on him. So it's a whole thing. Kidwin is thrashing on the ground from a regular old bug pile. Standard stuff. The swarm grabs and takes all of Kidwin's equipment, up to and including his earbud. Just pulling that earbud right out of the ear. Craig says, I see Skitter has finally learned a technique from a cord. Oh boy. That's like, I see that enemy got the point level. So, after pulling away all of Kidwin's stuff, she removes the bugs off of him like they're rejoining her escape attempt, as though she's still in one of the swarm clones. The ruse continues. But now that he doesn't have a phone, Kidwin can't call in what just happened. So he tries to go through the front door again, but then she uses more bugs that she had left like on his costume and stuff to tie his hand to the handle and of the front door, and then he accidentally jams the door open for a second because of the way, like, he's caught on it. And then she is able to dash in a bunch of bugs, and her little swarm finds a set of keys on the guard, and they fetch it. Back with Charlotte. I think I'm set. Just like that? It shouldn't be a problem. Wish me luck. I'll send you a message and meet you at the lair after school if everything goes according to plan. Yeah, from Charlotte's perspective, it's a really funny scene, and Taylor never like fully reveals that it's like, yeah, I'm actively fighting 3 capes at the gate. So in the cafeteria, some of the kids who look less well fed are trying to move toward the food. They can smell the pizza and they get pizza lust. Taylor moves forward toward the food as well and gives them a bit more confidence to head there. And, you know, keeping up her confidence to make it look like she knows where she's supposed to be, Taylor walks right into the kitchen. As she's trying to get into an air vent that she has a bunch of bugs on the next, like on the other side of, in the next room, which also those bugs have the guard's keys. So she's trying to connect the dots between her and the keys. She's trying to get in this air vent to, you know, basically get there. And then she feels a heavy impact just outside the building. Defiant has gotten out of a dragon mech. It's probably the Uther, let's be real. He uses his spear and the sort of electrical weapon that he's had since Arc 6, and he hits it onto a metal thing, and it makes an electroshock that kills all the bugs in the area and knocks the wind out of Taylor. Defiant pushes the door just completely out of the frame it's in without unlocking it. And instead of being Blue and Black Arms Master, and I kept calling him Defiant already, but let's just go back and make him Arms Master. But instead of the Blue and Black Arms Master, we get or I think he might be Blue and Silver. What am I saying? He is instead Green and Gold. And he's all dragoned out because he's Defiant now. So instead of wielding a halberd, he's got a spear. You know, very different. No one can tell that it's the same guy. He advances toward her, spear out, and forcing her to back out of the room into the cafeteria as she feels another dragon mech land on the other side of the campus. Dragon uses a jetpack to quickly fly through the halls of the school and blocks the cafeteria entrance as she arrives. Dragon and Arms Master. The name is Defiant. Skitter, I'm sorry it worked out this way. My hand was forced. Dun dun dun! Chapter end. Final chapter thoughts? I think it's a really good, like, not exactly a chase scene, but like, kind of a Metal Gear scene. There's a caution in a Metal Gear level. And Snake or Raiden or whoever has to run around until the caution level goes down. But the caution level is going to stay high for a long time because they got a tip calling them in saying that Snake is here. So yes, it's a lot of fun seeing her evade. I love that she's on minimal resources and she's just like doing the most with the least bugs. You know, I noticed something during the speed draw. The girl on Taylor's right was Sheila, I think, because she had the shaved side of her head. But you know, now that I'm looking back at the finished product, again, after having seen the speed draw, I realized it's not Sheila. Sheila Erasure. yeah, I guess moving on to 20.5. I'll just take a momentary break here. All right. So, 20.5, silence had prevailed as Dragon entered the room, and her words carried. But a few moments later, there's murmurs in the background. Everyone in the crowd who didn't hear now knows that Dragon revealed that Taylor is Skitter. Taylor sees Emma has gone stark white and is staring at her. Playing it cool, as always, Taylor lets out steadying breath. Defiant moves in a bit and is bug zapping when necessary to keep Taylor from getting any forces in the room. Assessing the situation, Taylor realizes she's facing Dragon, Defiant, Adamant, Clockblocker, and Kid Win without any backup, weapons, armor, or bugs. Oh, we got Alien Cat Daddy in the chat. Emma here is great. Yeah, it is great. I mean, she's not great, but it's great that she's here. Thinking back to when Brian had been explaining reputation in the Cape game to her early on, Taylor realizes that right now her reputation is the only thing that she has left. With another calming breath, she rolls her shoulders, accepting that she'll be arrested as a baseline. She's able to calm down and focus. She can't exactly figure out why they're not attacking her, let alone why they confronted her here in the school. Backing up as Defiant moves, Taylor hops onto the counter, tucking a leg under her for extra show. She can look at Dragon and Defiant, both in her field of view, and she mentally notes seeing Emma as well. That terrible Emma. Low blow, Dragon. Outing me? I thought you were better than that. Emma was frozen, eyes wide, lips pressed together. I try to be. I'm only following instructions. Okay, so I will say I pulled a lot of quotes in this chapter, but I also did my best to go back and remove quotes with some summary to shorten it down. So that is part of what I was doing when I was writing it. But I had a hard time on a lot of these because it felt like the exact wording was necessary or just the only succinct way to say something or whatever. But anyway. So Taylor asks if the bosses had sent Dragon and Defiant to arrest her to compensate for losing the expensive mechs in Arc 16. Dragon tells her that that was a beta test anyway, so even though they lost the very expensive Azazel, please do not do this again, Skitter. My Azazel, it was too expensive to lose. That's not why they're here. Taylor brings up the rules of the Cape game and says Dragon's blatantly breaking them by revealing her identity publicly. Dragon says that she didn't have a choice, and Taylor objects to this, saying plenty of heroes have left the Protectorate, but Dragon and Defiant decided to stay. When Defiant says it's not that simple, we, the audience, have that great dramatic irony where we know what he means, but to Taylor, who has no idea that Dragon is an AI bound by internal rules to follow the law and by extension orders from the PRT, one of the most earnest heroes is being barred from doing what she thinks is right and forced into this action she can't justify. And she has no way of explaining herself to the person she's harming because she can't reveal either the rules why she's doing it or the orders that she got. Like, man, it's such a conundrum for Dragon. Anyway. Taylor says the people in charge don't know what they're doing if they thought starting a powers fight at a school was a good idea. Dragon tells her that they're doing their best but have less information and resources than before. Sure, it's the rest of us who pay the price. The last time we really talked, you were lecturing me about priorities. Do you really want to have this conversation where I have words with you about your priorities in light of everything that's happening with the Protectorate? Dragon calls her bluff and doesn't think Taylor will spill any secrets here. But when she moves forward and Taylor puts up a hand for her to stop, she does. Taylor doesn't know why they don't just walk up and grab her. It's not in you, Skitter. You'd be surprised what I'm capable of. Then Taylor gives her famous little speech, which we'll see later on a TV broadcast that's a recording from one of the cell phone videos. And I think we'll see it from... Maybe it does the thing where, like, it does callbacks where she says some of the lines she said in her own mind or something. I know it comes up again multiple times, not just the news footage. She ends her little ruthlessness speech by alluding to the fact that she has defeated Seer in front of the school. And Dragon and Defiant get worried at this point. Your swarm shouldn't be able to get near him. Taylor shrugs and lets things hang in the air for a moment, while she thinks how she's just like her best bud, Jack Slash. There's a couple paragraphs of her thinking through using the unknown and fear as a tool. I'm guessing you're trying to contact Seer somehow, and it's not working. Is he hurt? Taylor doesn't answer... is he hurt is Dragon, I think. Is he hurt? Taylor doesn't answer the question, thinks of Bakuda and Jack, again, her best buds. Then asks why the heroes are confronting her with all the potential hostages around. And this is when Defiant's all, is Seer hurt? Erg, I'm Defiant. She keeps asking why they're so confident she's not going to hurt anyone. Oh, Alien says, is this a spoiler-free discussion? I don't want to spoil anything by asking a question. I would consider this podcast, or this stream/podcast, however you want to think about it, as a medium spoilers zone. I would rather you not just, say a thing that happens, but if it's in service of talking about something, there's a lot more leeway to make comparisons. And I guess this is us kind of warning any completely new listeners. There may be a medium spoiler heading out from Alien Cat Daddy, and then me discussing it. Because when Vic is on the cast, we'll kind of casually talk about future events without trying to get too in the weeds with, the details of what's to come. Anyway, so, where was I? Yes, noticing Emma again, Taylor lashes out just a little bit, without thinking about it too much. I directed a centipede to crawl across her hand, and she shrieked. In her haste to get up from the bench, she fell. She scrambled to put distance between us. Both Dragon and Defiant tensed. I didn't really think about it when I was writing the script, but Dragon, and probably by extension Defiant, almost certainly know who Emma is and what she looks like, and that she was Taylor's bully before her trigger event. Because of the Sophia texts. So it just adds a layer to them thinking she's going to actually hurt Emma, I think. Taylor raises her hands like she's not doing anything, like, what? I'm totally innocent. And explains that if they were sure enough to try this, then she doesn't understand why they're so worried about Seer or her running a centipede over a civilian's hand. The other three heroes arrive in the cafeteria. Dragon says something to them, and Adamant and Kidwin run off toward the direction of Seer. Taylor meets the stare of Clockblocker's mask. It says that she meets his eyes, I think, but he's got a full face mask. Maybe you can like see the shadows of his eyes behind the mask, like he's Samus Aran or something. But I don't know. But she looks at him, then turns to Dragon, asking that if this was all just a setup to get her to try to take hostages and ruin the credibility of the Undersiders. Dragon says that that wasn't the plan, and it doesn't match with her understanding of Skitter. Going on to say, again, that she had to do this because she was ordered to, and doesn't really believe that Skitter would hurt the hostages. Oh no, I actually wrote that she had genuinely believed that Skitter wouldn't hurt the hostages. Same sentiment, but I thought it was worth stating in a different way, because it's like, yes. Anyway, Taylor says they're giving her a lot of credit to think that she won't lash out and just spill the beans if they arrest her. All these secrets she knows. But she brings up that they found out her identity because she helped with a major threat, but Dragon actually corrects her that that's not how she found or discovered it. And we know it was because of the texts that Alec forced Sophia to send, the very texts that got Emma suspended. Defiant wants to move this conversation elsewhere. Taylor gives a hard no and refers to the other students as a jury of her peers, which will become more relevant in a moment. Taylor's doing everything she can to subconsciously convey the idea that she's defenseless so that the heroes will look really bad if they attack. Dragon says before they got orders that roped them into capturing her, they had actually been in the city to talk to Skitter. Taylor asks why they're back with the suits because they're supposed to be pursuing the Nine. Defiant says they can talk about that in transit, which I interpret this moment as Dragon seems to think he's being too confrontational, insisting on the arrest. And he changes it a bit and says that he could explain about the Nine if they went to another room. Taylor says no again to this. Defiant points out she could still talk through her bugs from another room, but Taylor says that it's better to stay in the room where the people are taking cell phone videos of the whole conversation. She thinks the heroes will be hampered by needing to keep their reputation in mind, but Defiant says, "My reputation isn't a priority." To which Dragon nods in either agreement or approval. She has trained him well. Taylor gives a little monologue that boils down to them knowing it's a bad look to rough up an uncostumed, unarmed teenage girl, and reminds armed Defiant. I know this isn't the time when she accidentally calls him Arms Master, but I called it out because it's when she's reminding him of the scene in the hospital. He gives a monosyllabic response, agreeing with her. Clockblocker says he could just grab her, but Defiant says no. It finally occurs to Taylor that because of all the out-of-nowhere combos and victories she's pulled off in the past, they're worried that she'll pull something, like a sudden master plan out of nowhere. Thinking through how they've set up a situation to trap her and she has no idea what to do, and they still have to play it safe around her, she can't help but smile. Fuck me, it just sank in. It's really her. Taylor doesn't understand why this is the moment when Clockblocker puts it all together. But we all get it, right? We all know. Of course she would have an unhinged smile when she's backed into a corner, and the odds are totally against her. I would hazard a guess that when Clockblocker has imagined her face in the past, it has often been with an evil, unhinged smile on it. So, outside the building, Adamant has made his way through the swarms and reached Seer. He's using his metal manipulation to hack away at the silk cords with blades that he made on his armor. And Taylor kind of decides not to bother going after Adamant. She's just going to let him do his thing. She's more focused on the scene in the room that she's in, and suddenly something shocking happens that Taylor couldn't have possibly seen coming. I'm sorry. What? Defiant apologized. Vale says it's because everyone knows her friendly, delightful smile. Yeah, of course. Wait, what do you mean, evil and unhinged? She's a delight. Of course, Vale. She's just the nicest, kindest person, and she's never hurt a fly. So Defiant goes on to give a pretty good apology. Again, this is something that I was like, I had it in here as like the full quote, and I'm just like, I can't read everything. But it's about, how he interacted with her when they met at the beginning of the book, saying that he regrets how things have turned out and how things have gone since then. That's what you came here to say? In large part. We'd hope to talk to you, one cape to another, about the immediate future with the Undersiders running the city, and your expectations in particular, Skitter. But both Defiant and I thought he needed to say something to you along those lines, and perhaps you needed to hear it. If anything pushed us to come here, it was that. Taylor is lost for words. This was easier when she thought they were all assholes. She can't really square the circle, though, of why they would be coming here to apologize to her, and then they would also come to arrest her on the same trip, asking them aloud why they would do something that flies in the face of all the unwritten rules. They don't want to tell her, but she insists on knowing, and Defiant reveals to her that it was a precog who told them to do this. Taylor knows it's Dinah right away, but says, "Who was this precog?" Skitter. Who? You know who. It's a real I am your father moment, but it's Dinah was the precog moment. And Taylor's reeling. This has actually hit her really hard. She kind of just glancing blow, water off a duck's back kind of reaction to losing her secret identity. She was annoyed, but it wasn't that big a deal. But the idea that Dinah either betrayed her or is being used by the PRT is devastating to her. She thinks about all the things she's done and all the lines she crossed to save Dinah, remembers that she's still being recorded on cell phone cameras, and after a moment swings her legs around and hops down, unsteady on her feet, hair falling in front of her face. She asks them if Dinah was forced to give up the information. Defiant says she doesn't want to know, and Taylor realizes he's right. Vale says, yes, I was gutted at that the first read. I'm assuming at the Dinah reveal. Taylor asks what the odds are. 96.8% chance we bring you into custody. They also got odds on related questions to help guide them through the confrontation. Pieces are falling into place now for Taylor, finally understanding how they could justify coming here. They had something of insurance by knowing Dinah's odds on things. Taylor takes a moment to feel irrationally angry that Emma is here in the room right now, even thinking that she wants to just lash out and hurt Emma because she can. Mastering that impulse. Skitter. I never liked that name, Skitter. Never quite fit. If there's something else you'd like us to call you? Taylor feels as if Dragon is trying to talk her off a ledge. No idea. Defiant tells her that she should come with them because she knows how powerful Dinah's precognition is. He says that if she turns herself in, he'll testify on her behalf for being partially responsible for the path she took, etc. Okay. Yes? No. That was more of an, okay, I've decided what I'm doing. Students! She's taking hostages. A clear shot. I'm not taking hostages. It's really your choice on how this plays out. I'm not sure if you heard me say it before, but I described you as a jury. Now it's time for you to vote. Defiant tries to kill her momentum, but Taylor calls out to the students, "Stand if you side with me. I won't make any big speeches here. That's not who I am. I won't feed you lies or guilt you into this. It's your call." Around 100 students get up and decide to side with her. Taylor thinks about how she had felt the presence of the Undersiders as an undercurrent around her since she got to the school, and she should use that. As students join her, Taylor sees Emma standing on the sides with her fists clenched. Okay, so we finally got the question from Alien Cat Daddy. Okay. How much of the ending do you think is here? I hear Wildbow came up with it spontaneously, but looking back at this chapter, it's surreal. It's really hard to say. I know that if Wildbow hadn't gotten higher funding on Patreon and hadn't been able to quit his normal full-time job or whatever, then he was going to end the story around arc 25. I don't know if he was trying to foreshadow the ending. I don't know if maybe the ending's idea came out of writing this chapter. I can tell you from like backways spoilers that when he thought that Taylor was going to die at the end of arc 8 and that she was no longer going to be the core protagonist, then that the story would follow multiple different cast members. Like it was going to be Aegis after Skitter. Then, you know, he already had the idea for the ending mapped out. But the original ending, like, Skitter was literally dead. So the exact circumstances, you know, are different. But I think I understand what he's saying, and when we get there, I can I can elaborate more, because you know we'll be able to see the events, and then I'll say like, this is what I think would have happened without Skitter, kind of thing. But yes, I totally see what you mean. Alien Cat Daddy also says, every time I reread this chapter, it goes up in my list of favorites. Yeah. Hopefully not revealing too much, but Vic had said this chapter was very emotional for her as well. Especially during this moment of when she was moving out of the school with the other students, and when at the end of the chapter, as we'll see in a minute, when Taylor and Danny have their minor interaction and then part ways. Oh, and Vale had said he uses a method he refers to as breadcrumbs to write the serial, where every event in the past is usable in the future. It gives a feel of massive consistency. I also think he knows exactly how the powers work. Yeah, yeah, and I think he left himself enough wiggle room with how the powers can alter, either through use over time or through a second trigger event or just other things, that he can carve a path like some sort of worm. He can carve a path forward and make his way in the direction he wants to go, because he knew where he was starting, and I do believe that he knew where he wanted the story to end, and that he didn't know how to get there at first. Well, not that he didn't know how to get there, that he didn't know what path he would take. So yeah. But I mean, you're totally right. The resonance between the end of arc 20 and the end of arc 30 is like super huge. I mean, even down to some of the little details that I'm thinking about now from the stuff in 30, and like having just read this chapter. I want to talk about it right now so bad, but I'm not gonna. I'm gonna go back to my chapter summary. This is reckless. Probably. What are you doing if you're not fighting us? Defiant and Dragon wanted to use the hostages against me, putting me in a lose-lose situation where I was caught between them and having to hurt people to try and escape. I think I'm turning the tables. Turning the tables now. We're going to walk out of the school as a group. If you want to stop us, you're going to have to hurt us, and you aren't capable of doing that to my to people any more than I am. Skidder! Taylor. I'm just Taylor, for just a little while longer. I suppose I'll be retiring my civilian name, one way or the other, or one way or another, by the end of the night. Fuck you for that, by the way. I won't forget it. And right here I wrote, Dragon is a lady, but she gives a little sad boy apology under her breath. Wasn't me. Which I'm sure comes off real good from Taylor's perspective. She has no notes. Anyway. Taylor says as long as Dragon stands with the PRT, she's culpable too. Pointing onward, she moves with the crowd of students who had joined her. Clockblocker almost uses his new power glove, shooting out the fingers and having like lines come out from his fingers after they shoot out. But then Dragon says he'll hurt people, and so he retracts the glove instead. He doesn't use his power on it. The group is a chaotic mess. Some of the people are leaving when they get close to the capes, but more people are joining her side as well. Clockblocker tries to push through the crowd and get to her, but a group of students link arms at Taylor's suggestion and circle around him. They move toward Defiant, and Taylor has some of the students grab onto him. She assures them that they don't need to fight. He won't be able to move because he won't want to hurt them. He might not be a good guy, but he's a hero. Trust in that. Or is it the other way around? That apology sat oddly with me. Charlotte gets in the mix. She grabs directly onto Defiant's hand that's holding the spear. She wraps her arms around him and just clings there. Taylor has a moment thinking that she had another trigger event, possibly, before realizing the other students are, like I said before, all over the place, not really following her exact plan. They seem to have different emotional responses and reasons for joining her. Dragon starts trying to fly around with her jetpacks, but Taylor strategically gets some bugs in there, and the intake vents suck a bunch of bugs through and clog up. She has to reconfigure her jetpack on the fly and zoom out of the room to avoid running into people. She's like totally outside now, and Defiant is having a conversation with Dragon that we understand to be her asking him to lift more of her restrictions, and him being worried that he'll damage her code. The girl from the office meeting yells in Defiant's face. The one that I thought was in the right side of this picture initially. You were supposed to protect us! And he doesn't respond to this, continuing his conversation with Dragon. He relents to her and changes her code on the fly. Taylor tries to bite his hand with insects, but finds it to be an artificial hand. Once he changes her code, she stops trying to capture Taylor. She'd been trying to pick up and airlift Adamant and Seer, but she drops him on the ground and sort of stumbles to a fall. Alien Cat Daddy says, and I have to imagine this is about Taylor, she really does embarrass these dudes in every arc. Yeah. And then Craig hits us with the classic, you were supposed to join the Sith, or you're supposed to destroy the Sith, not join them. You know, maybe Anakin, we'll have a movie where he does it the other way, and he'll say the line I just flubbed. We'll say, Palpatine will say, you were supposed to join the Sith, not destroy them. Man, I've definitely heard multiple people say, like, I wish there was a version of Star Wars Revenge of the Sith where Anakin did the right thing. It's so funny every time. Um, where are we? When Taylor gets outside, still surrounded by students helping her, they find that the dragon mechs aren't trying to stop them. They're completely stationary. Taylor goes under the legs of one for the most direct route. And as Dragon stands in the distance, she doesn't make any moves. Taylor, like, flinches when Dragon first stands up. Taylor throws Kid Win a bone and uses bug arrows to show him where his gear is before she leaves. As they continue moving away from the school, Taylor keeps track of Dragon as long as she's still in range, and realizes that Dragon is having, like, hand tremors and stuff. And when she can tell that Dragon and Defiant are clearly not giving chase, she stops the group that she's with. She doesn't know what to say, and after a brief silence, Charlotte's friend Fern says that Skitter saved her dad. Other students start chiming in about why they were there. Imp stopped someone from threatening a sister. They fought the Nine, the ABB, helped feed people, warned about Shatterbird, fought Mannequin, attacked Leviathan in the shelter, fought the E-88. A collection of voices, a jumble, to the point that I couldn't take it all in. And then there's a page break. The last little bit is pretty short. It's only about a page of text. It skips to unclear amount of later in the day, but Taylor walks down Lord Street and with a heavy heart walks into range of her house. Sort of skipping about a bit, she realizes that her range is really, really far. Oh wait, no, she says that right here. And it's supposed to get bigger when she feels trapped, but she identifies this as being slightly different from that, and can't quite figure out how to explain to herself the feeling, but it's not trapped. So she figures out the area with some bugs, uses bees and ants and flies and stuff that would already be there, and keeps it pretty chill. She's able to, like, stealthily check out areas really well too by just having bugs do mostly their normal behaviors. She's very smart. She uses a butterfly, sends it in the house. One of the PRT officers sort of swats at it, and then the butterfly lands on Danny. They realize, one of them goes, "It could be her! Fan out!" And then they all, start running out the house. Some of them are getting into cars and driving off to various spots. Danny's still at the table, and the butterfly settles on his finger, and she's like thinking, am I being cliche? He says, "Taylor," and then it says, 6.5 city blocks away. I replied, "I'm sorry." The butterfly and I took off at the same time. So, by the way, 6.5 city blocks, I think the furthest we've seen it at any point in the past has been 5 blocks. So, if anything, it might have been bigger when she was trying to save Danny before the Shatterbird attack, but I'm not certain. Oh, man. Alien Cat Daddy says, she should have said, "I worm you." And Vale says, "Take that, you worm." Which is my favorite fake worm quote. Greg will say that in real life all the time, and it pretty much always gets me to laugh. "Take that, you worm." Oh no, I think I forgot to turn off my Discord notification settings. Ah! Why do I always do that? Let's see here. Yeah, that's the end of the chapter. As we sort of discussed while we were going through, it's a very emotional chapter. There's a lot of sort of, not that this book has a consistent status quo, but each sort of individual element of the book has a status quo, kind of, like Taylor's civilian identity, the state of Brockton Bay. Like, all these individual elements will have a changing status quo. And this upturned the status quo that has to do with Taylor's, like civilian identity, like I said. It overturns the sort of status quo between her group and the villains. It really shakes things up. The fact that, you know, this unveiling of her identity came with the cell phone videos, which we'll get out there, and the fact that she handled herself so well on camera was good, but she is just, as discussed, devastated by the whole Dinah thing. So yeah. Final chapter thoughts. I don't know. It's a good one. It's great. We finally get to see Taylor, like, receive some of the thanks and praise that she does deserve for all the bullshit that she's been through and all the things she's done. Pretty cool, cathartic chapter. Alien says it changes her relations with her dad too, for sure. Yeah, it definitely completely upturns the relationship between her and Danny. And for all the time she thought, does he know? He didn't know, but now he knows. I'll talk about the chapters more as I think of stuff as I go through the other sections at the end of the thing. So, moving on to the arc stuff. This is the last Taylor chapter in this arc, and I figured out this morning why I had thought that arc 20 had 6 chapters, and it's because in my mind, arc 20 and arc 22 are so closely associated that I was like transplanting the 6 chapter structure of arc 22 onto arc 20. So I think I just kept applying that in my mind until I reread the chapters fully. And like I noticed it last week, but I only figured out why this week. Anyway. This arc has shaped up to be one of the like fan favorites. I think this is generally considered to be like a top tier arc. I agree generally that it's amazing, but I also think that like a lot of the ones coming up are better than it just because they're so good. So maybe at the end of the book I'll do like a tier list for arcs for me, or maybe a whole rank ordering. Who knows? Maybe me and Vic can both do one. Vale says 22 and 30 are favorites for me. Yeah, I love 22, and I've definitely listened to it more than any other part of the story. Like, I kind of would just put it on as like an individual solo story, like when I was working, and it would like while away the majority of a workday when I had my old job. So like if I was up for it, I would just like run through arc 22, you know. Alien Cat Daddy says 17 is still my favorite. understandable. I mean, I definitely know there are a fair number of fans where 17 is like the ultimate standout for them, and there's that, the story from We've Got Word, or Word, We've Got Worm and We've Got Ward, where Matt had been sent just arc 17, knowing that it was part of a greater story, but reading it in the context of a solo short story. And that's what got him to read the entire story. And it makes sense. It's a great hook. I think Trickster's story is very compelling. Alien Cat Daddy says, 17 is when I realized it was my favorite story. Nice. And then Vale had said, I honestly thought 22 was the best thing I had ever read when I read it first time, until I got to 30. Then that took over as my favorite. I think I was a little frustrated with Taylor the first time I read 22 when I was in like the throes of it, the start of it. Because I was like, what are you doing? But then like even finishing it the first time and like coming back to it at all, I was just like, no, this is awesome. This is the greatest. Yeah. Anyway, feel free to continue talking on that topic. Phil says, I threw my Kindle when I was reading 22 first time. It didn't break. Well, I'm glad it didn't break. In the characters section, starting off with Principal Howell, I love her characterization. She kind of does just enough. Like, the way she couldn't justify waiting for, like, 5 minutes or something for Taylor. She dawdles just long enough. She's just a little slow. She keeps the conversation going longer. It's great. And she's, like, very focused on, like, you can't have a fight at my school. Are you insane? I think she's a really interesting character. She's in what? 4 total chapters, I think, of the entire book. She's in 20.345 and the next one 20.x. But like a lot of the really short-term characters, she stands out really well. I mean, I can still tell you about Sparky, and he's in 1 chapter. Same with Julia. Anyway, I love these side characters, these civilians. I mean, you'll get to see one of my all-time faves next chapter, because it's a new perspective character with no powers. The guards, the school guards, they're kind of shitty, as people, it seems like, and they kind of, like the guard outside seemed like a weird sleazebag and stuff, but when it comes down to it, they are, like, they're in the thick of it, they're guiding the students, they're not, like, running away, so at least they do their job. They're like Saltai. He's a bastard, but at least he does his job. The teachers, we don't get much from them, but like the teachers and guidance counselors seem to be like doing a decent job of marshaling the students around the school, keeping them in what they consider to be safe zones. The students themselves, I mean, we talked about it when they were marching out, but we see all kinds of sides of the students. We see a continuation of the theme from the previous chapters, where the divide is not only present but apparent between the students who stayed in Brockton Bay and the ones who had left and come back. The more clean, pristine students were pretty unlikely to side with Taylor when she made her escape, but some of them still did, I think. It's sort of instrumental that the students are there taking cell phone videos of what happens, and Taylor like perfectly threads the needle to not use them as hostages ever, and to appeal to them after having, had a conversation with Dragon and Defiant in front of them so that the students could like kind of get a vibe for what was going on. So, again, our girl Taylor thinks about how bad she is with social stuff, but actually, maybe she's incredible at it. I don't know. Alien says Clockblocker had the right idea. To just grab her? I mean, you're right. If they had just grabbed her, she couldn't have really done it. I also like that he strafe circles around the room when he's trying to get a shot on her when they think she's taking hostages. Oh man. Oh, circle strafing clock blocker. That's my new band name, actually. Circle strafing clock blocker. I wonder when clock blocker circle strafes if he goes clockwise or counterclockwise. So, moving on from the students, we've got Adamant. Adamant is actually pretty successful against Taylor's bugs. When he realizes that she's there, he battens down the hatches. He uses his metal manipulation to make his armor more or less impenetrable. The like slits of metal that are at the face are so thin that he can barely see out of them as like mesh for eye holes, but no bugs can get in. She thinks he's probably nearly blind, especially with the swarm of bugs like over top of the outside. But he successfully makes his way to Seer. Pretty good. I think to me he proves himself to be like decently capable. I think he's an interesting cape, and I wish that we got to see more of him overall. Seer, I think his power is really, really awesome. This is one of those ones where I can't exactly like put my finger on why, but just like the long range thin cone attack is cool. The fact that it's like desiccating stuff, it's like when you think of like aside from just churning someone's blood or blood bending or something, you're like, what would be an evil application of water bending from Avatar? And it's like, well, you could do ice spikes, or you could like sap all the liquid from someone. There's plenty of evil stuff you can do, I'm sure. And Seer's power just happens to be one application. And the fact that he has like a constant like semi-permanent shell around him of the effect, it's all awesome. Seer's cool, even though I don't know anything about his personality. Chris, or Kid Win, this is not a good chapter for him. He has a real kid lose moment here. He honestly just completely loses this match. It's so bad, dude. It's not good. He looks pretty incompetent. Dennis, got the right idea to just end the fight at the start of the fight. Unsuccessful. Greg says gamer mentality. I'm not exactly sure which thing is gamer mentality, but yes, gamer mentality. Oh, Vale's gotta leave for dinner. Bye, Vale. Okay, so Dragon will just sort of scoot along. I don't have that much to say about Clock Blocker. His new glove is cool. I know I keep calling it the Power Glove, and that's definitely not what it's called, but I call it the Power Glove. I'm not gonna not do that. Oh, Greg was talking about the circle strafing. Yeah, definitely. He's played a lot of first person shooters. Um, Dragon has an extended interaction with, Taylor. She's able to really show her warmth of personality. Taylor's really upset by the just following orders talk, but I think overall her impression of Dragon is pretty positive. She literally is mad at herself for not being mad at them anymore. It's that moment is pretty cute, actually. She's like, "Damn it, I wanted to hate them." Dragon rules. We love Dragon. Defiant. He's really doing his best to apologize. He's on the Dragon program to rehabilitating your image and self confidence. It was a system and method created entirely by Dragon, and it's where she follows your every move 24/7 and makes sure that you're being good. It's not really applicable to real life, and it's probably not healthy, but Defiant's kind of a freak, so for him it actually works out pretty well. He's very contrite in these chapters. He's sorry. He's sorry even. But he will not accept it if Taylor is hurting people. That's unacceptable behavior. He's got to keep his standards up. I didn't write her in here until I was actually doing the stream already, but Dinah. We don't know Dinah's motivations, but we're pretty certain that Dinah willingly gave up the information against Taylor. Dun dun dun! The betrayal. The heartbreak. My young ward has turned against me. So yes, just the minor Dinah ref. Emma. Man. How the turntables. Emma is shocked by these revelations and is unhappy to find that Taylor is Skitter and could have bug-piled her for ages. It completely shatters her worldview. How could someone like Taylor, secretly have been ruling over a city? How could this be? All he needed was a hot lizard-themed superhero AI girlfriend therapist. Exactly. Is that really too much to ask? That he be in a emotional, possibly sexual relationship with the world's most advanced AI? Using alien technology? Is that really too much to ask? Probably. So, yeah, I mean, Emma is both shocked and a source of outrage for Taylor as this goes on. A lightning rod for her unpleasant feelings. It's a little thing, but I think crawling that centipede over Emma's hand, letting her know, I could have always got you. Pretty good. It's not the most mature thing, but I'm not here to tell these characters to act mature. Sometimes you gotta get even a little bit, freak out the person who is being a piece of shit to you for so long. Over a year and a half. Yeah, anyway. So sort of transitioning downward into the Taylor section, yeah, she's all over the map. She doesn't know what she's feeling. She feels all kinds of things. She can only gauge her own emotions by her physical outward reactions. It's bonkers. She is, just on this total roller coaster. First getting her identity revealed, then hearing the Die news. So, yeah. A whole thing. I feel like I would have more to say about Taylor if I hadn't talked about it so much in the chapter summaries, if I had sort of breezed by things, but I don't actually know if I have that much to say about her. I may, I'll probably start getting even more loosey-goosey with calling her Taylor or Skitter when in costume. Probably whatever feels most appropriate. In the past, much as in the past the artwork was from inside of Taylor's eyes, the naming convention was just whatever she was dressed up as at the time, or if people were referring to her like as Skitter when she was Taylor, I would still say Skitter from their thing. But now it's all gonna get all mixed about. It's like her civilian and cape identities no longer have that much of a barrier, if any. Moving on from the characters to the powers, knowledge, and world building. I just pulled some little things. They mention again the hexagon-shaped cells blending near seamlessly into one another to form the glass windows. I thought that was cool again. She thinks it might be countermeasures against Shatterbird, thinking that there may be another attack. I pulled out this little bit. Listening in required conscious thought, but I'd been working on training my brain to follow human speech with the insect's alien hearing. It was easier the more I had nearby, but I'd have to make do. Again, this is like weight training. She's like, "Oh, I've gotta lift all this extra weight than normal. Oh man, I gotta map out all these hallways and listen in with fewer bugs." Oh yeah. I was dimly aware of Sear striking down one of the decoys. The moisture in the air zipped to his hand, and nearly half of the decoy was ruined, the bugs dazed or unable to move. The spiders, I noted, suffered worse than most. They used a kind of biological hydraulic system to move. Shit, I liked my spiders. They were particularly useful. I like when she talks about bug facts or thinks about bug facts. I think it's a lot of fun and adds some nice verisimilitude to the world. Oh, Alien has said, Dinah is kind of like Tattletale in that way. You don't know how much foresight their power gives them. It makes their motivation suspicious. Yeah, it's true. It's true. I didn't have enough bugs to spare that I could leave them on walls. I was forced to personally memorize every corridor and feature of the building that might be important. Clockblocker was making his way to the front. He was slightly different. He wore what seemed to be a gauntlet, out of proportion with the rest of his body. Yeah, his Power Glove rules. I love it. I'll never get over how cool it is. He was wearing armor, forest green and gold, with the stylings of lizard's frills or bat's wings on the trim, and a faint etching of scales to the green portions. His spear, too, bore distinctive design with an etching like a lizard's skull worked into the heavy spearhead. And then hopping down to the only extract from the next chapter. Her jetpack expanded with an almost explosive motion, fanning out to have her 4 times the number of intake vents, 4 times the number of output charges, and 2 laser turrets that curved over her shoulders. There was no way she could pack that much machinery in that much space. Either it was all crammed into her torso, which was impossible, or Armsmaster Defiant had tweaked it. Irony of ironies. Why not both? It's definitely in her torso. I don't have a bonus this week. No portraits drawn yet. I know it's been a long time. I do intend to get back to those someday. But the audience participation question. So, it looks like we only have one answer. it's Vale, and feel free to throw on any last-minute answers. This is one of those essay answers, so we're gonna dig in for a story real quick. Inspired by Skitter's swarm and Colin's talent for reduction, Dragon made the Omukare. On first look, it was a 20-foot-long metallic centipede, but any time a segment is hit, that segment splits off to become a 2-foot-long centipede, and each of those segments would break into 100 tiny centipedes when struck. Colin helped so much with that last bit. Controlling the large initial unit, the smaller 2-foot-long units, and potentially thousands of tiny ones was a fascinating problem. She also had to be careful that these things could strip the flesh off of a bull to the bone in under a second. They were all programmed to not penetrate the skin of any human without a command from Dragon. Their primary use was restraint, secondary silence by swarming the vocal area of opponents. Last resort was biting and tearing. She came away from this with a bit more respect for Skitter's power, and also decided to bring this unit along when she was ordered to apprehend Taylor at the school. Maybe it was showing off a tiny bit, but she was proud of how well she and Colin had interpreted Skitter's power, and it should realistically only take a couple of seconds for Colin to efficiently apologize after Taylor was restrained and silenced. This engagement also included Dinah. A quick question to make sure it would meet the objective was disappointing. The numbers dropped precipitously. Maybe she could talk to Colin about other ways to make sure his apology was completed while they apprehended Taylor. And then in spoiler text that I am going to read, I think it is canon that this engagement went perfectly because of Dinah, so I don't see it improvable. But I do think it's cool to think about things Dragon could do to try. Yeah, and oh, nope, it's still the same thing. Alien had Zeb from before. When Vic had sort of brought up the idea of this question, and I wasn't sure how to alter it too much. The thing I had thought was kind of she ended up feeling so bad in the scenario that she felt forced to have Colin change her programming. But maybe this should have been an earlier thing on her priority list anyway, to not have to follow orders of the law, because if she were to just go to a country where the law said you have to do exactly what X, Y, or Z dictator says, and that's the law, then it'd be now Dragon works for North Korea, I guess, or whatever, just as a random example. So it's a pretty big, terrible weakness to have. So I guess my main thought is I would have addressed this weakness earlier, even if it was dangerous, because I would have seen it as a huge threat to my own autonomy as Dragon. And Alien says about the canon answer for that Dinah had helped. I'm guessing this is the question of what you mean that she helped her get away. I think that from the perspective that Vale is putting out there, and I wish I'd gotten to this a little sooner so Vale could answer, honestly, but from the perspective that Vale is presenting here, I get the impression that Dinah, knowing that she would escape, was fine because of how things would play out further down the line, and that was Dinah's perspective. And not that she fed them bad information, but that she lied through a mission in a way that she knew would yield a certain result, I guess is how I would put it. I definitely think Dinah manipulated the situation in a way that the PRT didn't understand, and she was the person closest to having a full grasp of things. But yeah, we can talk about that later when the book gets into it. It's one of those like medium spoilers where I'm like, oh, I feel like I really have to justify what I'm saying, and I can't without like digging directly in. So it's a little rock and a hard placey, but we will definitely talk about that later. I'm going to take a moment to try and come up with a question. I did spend time to try and come up with a question beforehand, believe me, but it's not that easy to come up with them on the fly. I mean, if you're great at coming up with them, anyone in the audience, I mean, feel free to just ask your own. I mean, I will totally read other people's stuffs from that chat in the show if I think it's like interesting and relevant, you know? Let's think. Next chapter is about Stan. I love Stan. Spoiler alert there, for my feelings. I think he's such a great character and so interesting. You know what? I probably want to hear what people think about Guan Xi. You know what I'll ask? I'll just ask people if they think Guan Xi is one of their strengths. A bit of an odd question, but 20.x. Do you personally... Maybe I can word it a little different. Do you... How... You know what? I don't know what the question's going to be exactly. I'm going to just have to figure it out before the next time. But it's going to be something similar to that about Guan Xi and about your feelings about it, your relation to it, something like that. So I just need to word the question later. But I'm going to start up the outro music, because that's what we do at the end. Thank you for being here, Greg, Vale, Alien Cat Daddy. The music being used has once again been Queen Scourge by ScarlettXOX. You can find her Twitch channel, twitch.tv/Scarlett_rogue. The Discord server link, as well as the others, are in the stream description and the channel description. The author of the work being discussed can be supported on Patreon at patreon.com/Wildbow. The full text of the work is available for free online at parahumans.wordpress.com. There is also a fan-made audiobook of the entire work at audioworm.rain-online.org. Yeah, one of the advantages of having the shorter song is I don't feel that bad just letting the whole thing play out every time. So, I'm gonna say goodbye, but it's gonna finish. I'll see y'all on the next one. And a final cheers to Greg.